Host of the Craig Hoffman Show on the Team 980. It is our pal Craig Hoffman. What's up, C-Hoff?
No easy transition on that one,
Yeah,
huh?
No, but we got to, we got to tease it.
You would
Got to
never-
tease it. It's a good bit.
You would
I
never do
understand.
something so sophomoric on your program. I know this.
Not quite that sophomoric. I leave that to you guys in the mornings. We do some pretty dumb stuff though. So there's, we try to get our fix in, but we
Sure.
typically leave it out of the restrooms, especially at work.
Well, what's dumb is betting that the Commanders aren't to score 30.
Right, because that's what they do. That's basically what they do now. They just go out and roll the ball out and score 30 points every week.
It's actually remarkable. I mean, I'm starting to get used to it, Craig, to be honest with you.
It's wild, especially considering how much bad offense that we've all covered in the last decade. I've been here since 2015, and like mostly offensively, it's been terrible. Even some of the quote unquote good years with Jay and Kirk, where they got rolling a little bit, like it was stretches where they got going. And obviously, we could look back in a couple of weeks, and this could be a stretch, but this is the best offense I've covered. Like it's not even remotely close in terms of how detailed up it is, in terms of how many different things they do well. And Logan and I have said on Take Command the last couple of weeks, like, oh, this is the hardest test Jayden will have faced yet, because Arizona does some good things defensively. Obviously look what they did yesterday. They went out and beat San Francisco yesterday, who had put up 30 something the week before. So every week it's like, oh, this is the challenges. This is where it could get tough. These are the things. And then by about the third drive in the game, Jayden's just like, yeah, all right, I got this one. Next. Like, how many touchdowns do I have to score till this thing's over?
And just his rushing just seems so effortless. And like if they're going to try to pressure him like on a third and short or fourth and short, he's just going to tuck it himself. I think he's got 22 first downs rushing the ball. I'll double check that stat. But it's impactful rushing, and I mean, he's going to rush if he stays upright. What do you think? 900 yards? Like
he'll be,
like he's on that sort of pace.
At least he might be 1,000-yard rusher this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the team PR team looking up a couple of things for me yesterday, just in case the stats came. And one of them, I was like, when was the last time a Washington quarterback rushed for 100 yards in a game? And there's actually only been one in franchise history, Robert versus Minnesota in 2012, which of course everybody remembers. And you got much of that yardage on that one run where the dudes run into each other. So that's the only 100-yard game in Commanders history by a quarterback. And that feels like a very much yet stat. It's almost like how many is he going to get this year? His rushing, I think you're so right, is such an impactful thing, because it's hard to get first downs, and especially hard to get first downs on third and long. And he's gotten a couple on third and long this year. And it makes the things that teams want to do in certain situations impossible. Third down situations, third and longs especially, most teams want to play man coverage and then blitz. And if you do that and you don't get home, well, now you've got guys, defensive backs who are not looking at the quarterback because they're in man-to-man coverage. They're watching the guy that they're covering. And you now have defenders who have taken themselves out of the play because they've run past Jayden. And now he's in space. And that it makes it where it's just not all right, it's 3rd and 7, he ran for 8. It's like it's 3rd and 7 and he ran for 23. And that completely changes field position. It completely is demoralizing to a defense. It's tiring for a defense. And that then, because they're chasing him everywhere, and then you compound it with, okay, he's fine. Let's get back to the line of scrimmage and get in this hurry up and keep going. And so the way they wear teams down is really, without wearing themselves down, by the way, is really, really impressive. And obviously Cliff has taken his play calling to a new level to enhance that. But some of this is just purely physical. If they are wearing teams out, and his running is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and the offensive line we questioned before the season started, because there was a couple guys, new guys that we really didn't know who they were, we weren't familiar with, and then they drafted somebody.
Don't lie, Lurch. It's the guys that were staying that you were much more worried about.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, the offensive line has been awesome.
Yeah.
Especially in the run game.
They have. They've done a really – Cliff, I think it's funny because, like, if you know type of thing.
He's a genius, offensive genius.
Well, I was to say, in Arizona, people were like, oh, air raid this, his college offense didn't work. And it's like, well, the one thing he did really well in Arizona was run the football. Like, James Conner had a 1,300-yard season.
Yeah.
And then you add
James Conner had
Lynn.
17 touchdowns one of those years.
Yeah, he's really, really sharp in the run game. And what I was listening to, I think it was Ben Solak on Mita Kimes' show last week, and he made a really great point about, you have, in the air raid, right? Mostly it's what we call 10 personnel, 4 wide receivers, one running back, no tight ends. And instead of having what he has now, where he's got 3 tight ends on the field all the time, you have to figure out how to get these college 165-pound receivers to block in the run game. And so you have to really think hard schematically about it. And then he got to the NFL and he tried some of that stuff. It didn't really work. He shifted his run game. He started using different personnel groupings, and he's taken that to a whole new level here. And that'll get back to the O-line point in a second. But because he's had to think in detail about that, you see some of that come out in the way they design this run game in terms of certain pullers and getting guys in certain spaces. And so you add that with this particular offensive line, which is filled with terrific athletes. Sam Cosmi gets out in space and moves. Andrew Wiley, not great in a phone booth, blocking one-on-one pass protection, can't get out, run, and smoke people. And so they do a really good job of putting them in good positions, using their strengths, protecting them, in terms of their weaknesses. They use chip help on some of these third down situations where Jayden is going to have to drop back and pass in true drop back. And just the variety in play calling also matters a lot. It really is. Bobby Johnson's done a great job. These guys deserve a ton of credit for the work they put in and the cohesiveness. But I tried to tell people last year, the offensive line issues were so quarterback and play calling influenced. And people were just like, oh, they suck. And I'm like, I get it. You're just watching your quarterback get killed, and it's not very fun. But I promise you one day you're going to understand that it's a lot more play calling and quarterback driven. And Jayden gets the ball out quickly, and Cliff doesn't put them in true drop back situations. It slows the pass rush. And then you add the tempo factor, and defensive linemen are on the field longer than they want to be, and they're just tired. And all of a sudden your offensive line looks great. And I'm like, remember that thing that I said that eventually you'd understand? I hope you get it now.
Craig, Austin Ekeler, what an awesome signing so far. 30 touches through 4 games for 301 yards. Even my feeble brain can compute that's 10 yards per touch between his receiving and his rushing. He's been super impactful, and hopefully, the managed touches for him, especially coming off the concussion, that continues to be a thing. But I mean, they have to get the ball in his hands as many times as possible without risking injury. I know it's threading the needle, but he's been awesome so far.
He has, and it's kind of funny. You watch him, and I feel like you can see it a little bit more in person, but you can tell on TV. The angles he runs at are so special because he's so low to the ground. He can just kind of shift himself into spaces. And when you think about what his issue was last year, he had an ankle injury. And it's if he couldn't really bend and his ankle mobility sucked because his ankle was hurt, it would make sense that the little guy who squeezes through tight spaces and then bursts out of them probably won't be quite as effective. And so now he's healthy. He was healthy going into the offseason, healthy coming into this year. His lower body has stayed healthy. Obviously, hope that the concussion and everything is fine with that. But it has allowed him to be the explosive, squirmy type of player that just finds space. And, the league now is so much about explosive plays and how do you generate them. And when you can hand the ball to a guy or get a screen pass to a guy and have him generate an explosive play without having to drop your quarterback back, expose him to big hits, and make him make an accurate throw 30 yards down the field, that's a major, major improvement for the offense. I mean, for all the talk about Jayden's accuracy over the first couple of games, and there's a huge drop-off yesterday, and we're not talking about it at all because they still put up 34 points in 3+ quarters. Why? Because they found explosive plays in other ways, and some of that was, the screenplay to Austin, the run by Austin. And those explosive plays are how you score in this league, and he has been as big of a factor in those as anybody not named Jayden Daniels this year.
Talking to Craig Hoffman, host of the Craig Hoffman Show on the Team 980. So we put up our Junkies poll of the day, presented by Scotty's Vodka, Maryland made, super smooth, loved throughout the DMV. I'll ask you the question: do you trust the defense yet?
You'd have to define what trust is, which I realize is not how poll questions work. And that's a silly nuance thing that I always want. I'll say this: I actually feel like they played pretty consistently the last 3 weeks. So in that way, yes, I do think they're getting better. I would answer the poll question, yes. I think they're getting better. I also think they actually played fairly consistently the last 3 weeks. The difference is the offenses that they played. You play Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, a top 5 quarterback who gets the ball out quickly, and Jamar Chase, a top 5 receiver who, as he showed again yesterday, can score from literally anywhere on the field against anyone at any time. And you still give up 33 points, but there were signs in that tape that you're like, oh, they're starting to figure some things out. It gets ruined by what I just talked about with Austin. Explosive plays ruin games for defenses. Well, they still gave up explosive plays, and they were to Jamar Chase, and that's Jamar Chase being Jamar Chase. You go up against a not nearly as good offense in Arizona with a quarterback who had a kind of a rough day, inspired by the Commanders' defense and what they did to him. Marvin Harrison is not nearly as polished as Chase, and they give up 14. They then go up yesterday against the worst offense in the league. Like that Cleveland Browns offense is an absolute like affront to NFL football. And they thoroughly dominate, and outside of a late score, you would have held them to 6 points. Like that is the consistency with which they have performed has been there multiple weeks in a row. If anything, they've gotten better over those 3 weeks. And then the results in terms of how many points they've given up has been directly correlated with how good or bad the offense they're playing is. And so if we can count on them to put in this kind of performance, like against most teams, you're probably giving up 14-21. And like you can win a lot of football games that way, especially when your offense is scoring 30 every week.
Well, Cleveland will be drafting a quarterback in the first round. And I would just either cut Deshaun or start the rookie over Deshaun. That's what I would do.
Yeah, the dead money on that contract is great. What I would honestly,
there's only 2 years left. They only have to suffer for 2 more years. But
yeah, but we're talking like the Russell Wilson cap hit that the Broncos are taking this year is not even like it's some lower than it should be percentage of what they would eat with Watson. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it either. Like
they
you're gonna
have to
pay
because
him.
He sucks. He
You're
literally
have
sucks.
To pay him. But like the problem there is the ownership doesn't want like. I think Stefanski didn't bench him yesterday to make a point because there's no other like what competent football coach is keeping Watson out there, like especially in that the first half, like they're in that game. How do you not come out at halftime and be like, all right, we're going with Jameis Winston?
I know.
But like also if I was in the front office in that team, I would be calling the NFL every day, like, hey, these fresh lawsuits. You think maybe we want to look into them and suspend him and see if we can maybe fire this guy for cause?
Oh, they would love that.
The details in those things are horrific. Like that guy sucks so much, and they're just like trotting him out there every week, and the NFL's like, yeah, go ahead, trot him out there every week. And if it seems like the obvious thing for everybody but Deshaun Watson would be to figure out a way to void that contract because he's a terrible person, and they're just trotting him out there every week. NFL, baby, that's how they do it.
Oh yeah,
he's painful to watch. I mean, it's just like
I did enjoy him getting absolutely crushed multiple times.
That was fun to watch.
It looks like when he throws a bad pass, I mean, I saw it on Amari Cooper's face a couple of times. It's like they're just giving up on him.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to guys.
There's no way they're supporting him.
Right.
I don't think so.
You know, taking the personal, like off-field stuff aside for a second, like I've talked to guys here through bad quarterback play, and they just kind of give you the like, hey man, we're just hoping it clicks for him because like if you're in the NFL, you're good. And obviously Watson, when he was his last year in Houston before everything went sideways, like he was a top 5 quarterback in the league. Like he was really, really good. And so what you're just hoping for as you prepare yourself for the week, if you're a receiver or an O lineman or someone else on that offense, is that he has a week where it all comes together. And then, you know, you get a couple of passes in the dirt fairly early on and you're like, oh no, this is what we're doing again. Because these guys work so hard. It hurts to play NFL football. And you're going out there knowing you don't have a shot. And that is just so intensely demoralizing. So I do not envy the other people in that locker room. I'll put it that way.
How do you feel? How do you feel about the Ravens game?
I feel like it should be competitive. I mean, I do think this offense can continue to score. Obviously, Baltimore, like Derrick Henry could run for 200 yards. The one thing that Washington still needs to really figure out defensively is certain run plays with pullers, like when you have an offensive lineman that doesn't just block straight forward, but loops around the line and leads a back. And Cleveland didn't run one until the third quarter yesterday, and it was a 35-yard gain on the first time they actually ran it, which tells you also how bad Stefanski's doing as a play caller. But, like, Baltimore ain't going to wait till the third quarter, and the dude running behind those big offensive linemen that are pulling is Derrick Henry. So there is a chance that Derrick Henry ruins this game for Washington, but I also think that Washington can score, so they'll come right back. So in some level, I expect a shootout. Like, the lean would be shootout a la Baltimore yesterday. Of course, that means it'll wind up being like an 18-17 game because that's how the NFL works.